This is a brief excerpt of 88 cores, just a minute or so of a 4.5-hour video. It's a slow, wordless, 3,000-meter descent through the Greenland ice sheet. It's about time, time that's embedded deep within the Earth, the deep time of climate change. I approach these works as landscapes, but landscapes extended to take in these incomprehensible realms. This artist is capturing a Santa Monica sunset confined in a neat and tidy frame. Our landscapes are spilling, flooding, burning out of these frames, and in scales that are difficult, if not impossible, to imagine. The numbers of climate change are too large or too small. The pace, too slow, until it's too rapid. The substances, methane, CO2, invisible. And the view out my window, today's rain, belies the longer-term trend or drought. Climate change demands a shift in how we see the world and how we look at our surroundings, from the immediate to a much longer view. From the horizontal we associate with landscape to portrait mode, an extended vertical section, one that reaches above and below and back in time. Call these overscape for the atmosphere, underscape beneath our feet. In 2011, I launched Heads Up, a challenge to visualize climate data. I was inspired by the ultimate underscape, a map of global groundwater created with data from 2 satellites whose mission it was to ping the Earth for small changes in gravity. What changes gravity in one spot on the Earth? The answer is mass. The changing mass of water, even water deep beneath the surface, can be detected and mapped from space. Suddenly, these 2 satellites look to me, I'm an artist, like 2 eyes, or 2 lenses, or 2 3D X-ray vision glasses, because they were able to see inside the Earth. And this is not only of interest to water managers, this is important for all of us, because water flows and it ignores political boundaries. But nations don't always share their data about their water. These 2 satellites and the science and the scientists behind them restored a whole Earth vision of the Earth's distribution of water. I went to Thomson Reuters, who donated time on their sign for this competition. NASA and JPL gave me the satellite data, well data from USGS. I put together a panel of water experts and designers, and the winning visualization was by the Dutch artist Richard Weihen, which combined the seasonal and the long-term data for this comprehensive map. We launched in Times Square on World Water Day 2012. It ran 4 times an hour for 6 months. So millions of people passing through Times Square saw this, many of whom responded to our invitation to put their cities on the sign. Those are those pink graphs you see, and on their phones. And we received cities from all over the world added to our sign. So after Heads Up, I returned to Los Angeles, where I live, and which many of you know is undergoing a severe drought and even fire. And I turned my attention to water that was local, the local Los Angeles aquifer. I thought I would just find the perfect, maybe satellite data of the LA aquifer, but I found something very different. It turns out it isn't easy to map solid ground. And those who make the considerable effort to do so are looking for something. They're looking for water, they're looking for energy, they're looking for minerals, maybe gold. And those maps aren't always shared. From an artist's perspective, the usual rules do not apply. You can't just put your easel on the banks of an aquifer. You have to look deeper. I was referred to this image of the Los Angeles aquifer. It was created in 1961 by the Department of Water Resources. It appears as though there are clear blue flowing rivers under the city. I don't know if you can see, but the scale, it's about 200 meters high, some of these. They have names: the Silverado, the Sunnyside, the Gage. I wondered how I'd never heard of any of these bodies of water, why there weren't sports teams named after them. And I hadn't, of course, because this is an utter fiction. It's not a lie. In the corner it says idealized section, and it's considered an accurate representation, but it is misleading. Representation matters. The way we look at the world and present it matters. With this image, this idealized image, perhaps the city planners from that time can be forgiven for the unchecked growth and rampant use of water in the 60s. Our decisions are based on what we think we know about the world, and this view showed abundance. We need, in this changing arid time, a different view. So it turns out water doesn't flow in clear underground giant rivers. It percolates and collects in and among ancient layers of silt and sand and clay. And these vertical lines in this map indicate drilling. And all the information in this map is inferred from information, material inside those very thin lines and literally scooped into boxes like this one, or these, the Underscape of Southern California. So intrigued with this new view, I imagined what it would be like to take an elevator and descend layer by layer, year by year, 2.5 million years below my city. I photographed the layers, stacked them, essentially just putting them back in their original vertical orientation, and together with the artist Rafiq Anadol, created Under LA, a projection of the Los Angeles aquifer onto the banks of the Los Angeles River. This was part of a public arts festival in 2016. It was commissioned by the city of Los Angeles. We showed it in several locations over several weekends. This train will give you a sense of the scale, here it goes, and the pace of the work. So this might not look like water, but this is actually what water looks like under Los Angeles. Ice cores are known as paleothermometers. Snow, like you saw at the beginning of the talk, gradually over the years, tens of thousands of years, is compressed into banded layers of ice. And the bands in these layers can be counted like tree rings. Chemistry and particulates in the ice is correlated to events. This is a layer of volcanic ash from 50,000 years ago. Air bubbles in the ice hold ancient air, providing an accounting of ancient atmosphere. I just find them breathtakingly beautiful. So when I learned that these magnificent poles of ice, some of them 2 miles long, were cut and stored in 1-meter canisters, I simply wanted to put one back together again. That turned out to be ambitious. This is the freezer of the National Ice Core Lab in Lakewood, Colorado. It is a national treasure holding miles and miles of polar ice. And yes, it's really cold in there. I had the great fortune of being able to work with the scientists there. Here we're doing some additional scanning to create 88 cores. Here we're about 2 hours further from when we started. This is about 60,000 years ago. This was exhibited by the Climate Museum in New York, their show aptly called In Human Time. As you can see, we ran it floor to ceiling to provide that sense of descent through an elevator in time. I was greatly honored that prints from 88 cores, those are individual meters, were at the UN for the occasion of the Secretary General's recent address on climate action. Another really important aspect, an essential aspect of this work is the public aspect. At night in New York, we raised the shades to the gallery so that passersby on Fifth Avenue could witness the light and the pace and the vulnerability of ancient ice in juxtaposition of that with New York City. One night, a fire truck went by, providing a bit of fire and ice. It's a nice segue to, these are geothermal cores from under the Salton Sea, an inland sea in Southern California that has very strong geothermal activity, a potential source of energy. This is an installation in Singapore, the Media Arts Nexus screen. It's 15 meters wide and a public passageway at NT University. So our images of the world, the way we see, our sense of our relationship to the world are very important. The blue marble, NASA's iconic image of the Earth from space, is widely credited with having galvanized a whole Earth and environmental movement. But today, now 50 years since then, we need to further shift our perspective. From the outside, gazing at a far and distant planet, to acknowledging that we are here, living on this planet, that we must take action, extend our vision to include the deep time and the deep space, the overscape, if you will, and the underscape.
And look within.
Thank you.